Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington. And I'm here today with one of my good friends, Ben Lucas of NOM Creative. And Ben was so nice to come after hours today from work to the house in West Seattle. And Ben, thanks so much for being here. And why don't you say hi and tell us who you are and what you do?
Well, hi, and thanks for having me. So I'm Ben Lucas. I'm a photographer based in Seattle, and I shoot everything portraits. So weddings, portraits, seniors, families, boudoir, and then a bunch of cosplay stuff too.
Yeah, Ben, I definitely want to talk about the cosplay too. I've been following Ben's launch of his Star Wars pinup calendar on Facebook and Kickstarter for a while, and that finally kicked off the ground, right?
Yes, it actually just came in last Friday, and I have been swimming in boxes. So I'm trying to get those mailed out to all the Kickstarter backers right now, actually.
So to go on a tangent right off the bat, what was that about the Star Wars calendar that really kind of gravitated towards you?
Yeah, so I am a little bit of a nerd. Me and my friends all have Star Wars costumes. I actually have a first order TIE fighter pilot, but I know everybody else that has everything basically. And so October of last year, I got this idea, hey, why don't we do a pinup calendar? So I got everyone together and I came up with all these fun ideas. And so I've been working on it. The very first shoot happened last January. It was like January 4th. I bribed a friend of mine who's an interior decorator to keep their Christmas decorations up for an extra 2 weeks. And then so we went and did the Christmas shoot at his house. And yeah, so I've been working on it all year long, galactic pinups. And so it's all of these hilarious kind of like classic, a lot of inspiration pull from Elfgren and those classic pinups, but with a Star Wars twist. So they're nerdy and fun and just kind of hilarious.
What I like so much about you and kind of following you online is, you know, you do weddings and things, but you have a lot of different stuff going on, which I think I really appreciate as someone that's trying to do this podcast and, you know, with the Kickstarter and with the video tutorials and showing people kind of how to do camera tricks and stuff. I mean, is that something you're always thinking about, or kind of what is that thought process?
Yeah, so I primarily do portraits, but portraits can be so many different things. So of course, there's the creative portraits during the wedding day. There's this pinup calendar I've been doing. I run a photo booth so that people who don't want to pay for a full hour-long session can get good photos of them in their costumes at Comic-Con conventions. And the tutorials, of course, since I do portraits, I love sharing knowledge, and I used to work for a company that did online written articles tutorials, and I was just having so much more fun doing videos rather than the written article. And even though the video was more work, they're like, yeah, if you want to do video, do video. But it's been a couple of years since I did that, and that's something that I wanted to do more of. So I've been really focusing on doing the online tutorials. So that's another thing I've been working on. So yeah, between the photographer tutorials and all the portrait stuff and the photo booth, yeah, there's definitely a lot of different things going on.
Yeah, and so, you know, when we had talked and I saw you at a networking event a couple weeks ago, I said, man, you got to come and be on the podcast because, you know, I've known you now for a couple years. I'm also really excited. We'll finally get to shoot our first wedding together next summer. It'll be a long time waiting anxiously, but you talked about how, you know, one of the things that you're proud of is you've always kind of worked for yourself and been a photographer kind of out of college. Talk about that. Talk about kind of how you got into it, you know, starting in school and going from there.
Sure. So I picked up my very first camera in college when I was taking a class. I walked into a graphic design class and they said, if you do not own a DSLR, you will not pass this class. So I went to Costco and I bought my super, super fancy $500 Canon Rebel. And when I showed up to class the next day, everyone was like, ooh, look at that fancy camera. It's got 12 megapixels. Oh, it's so fancy. which of course, it's not the camera that makes it, but I didn't do very well in that graphic design class because frankly, the teachers didn't like my design chops that much. But when it came to the photography assignments, what they would do is there was a picture of a bench, and they put up a picture of a bench and they said, this is the picture of the bench that is fantastic and it's well thought out and well composed. And if you're gonna take a picture of a boring, banal object, it should be this picture. And then everyone in class, because we have small quiz sections, it was 140 people, and they all kind of knew it was my photo, even though the professors didn't say it. So 140 heads all just turn and look at me. And then actually I met my wife in that same class, and she was waiting in office hours to talk to the professor about something, and they put up their 10 favorite photos from the week. 7 of those 10 photos were mine, and the person she was sitting next to was like, yeah, that Ben guy, I hate that guy.
This is your wife.
Yeah.
Or not at the time, but.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was kind of how I got started in photography. So then when they didn't like anything I did in design, it was like, you know what, maybe there's something to this photography thing. So for the next 2 years, I took the easiest darn classes I could besides photography so I could 100% focus on it. I did like intro to philosophy and all those, they're fun, but they're low effort. And then for, 20 hours a day, I just breathed photography. And so I tell anyone else, there's like, oh, how do I get as good as you? I'm like, well, just do nothing else but photography for 2 years and you can be as good as me. Like that's really all it came down to. It was just reading books and going to workshops and doing everything I could. One of my favorite quotes is actually Mark Twain's, I never let schooling get in the way of my education. Because I technically have a degree in photography, but everything I learned was sought out or, online workshops, in-person workshops, learning from people who knew more than me, practice, and just doing it a million times over, figuring out, oh, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? So that was kind of how I got into being a photographer. And then as soon as I graduated, I didn't really look for other jobs because like, well, I did all that training and I'm good at exactly one thing. So straight from there, my parents are attorneys. My dad set me up with an LLC and he said, you're good to go, run a business. Of course, we laugh now because that's not how you run a business, but I didn't know any better back then. So yeah, ever since I left school, I've been going it as a photographer. At first I was doing literally anything people would pay me for, kids' birthday parties, photos of their cats, whatever, it didn't matter. I tried shooting roller derby. I tried shooting automotive sports. I tried shooting anything people would pay me for. And I very quickly found out I'm very good at this. I'm very bad at that. I'm very good at this. I'm very bad at that. So now I basically have narrowed it down to people. So the thing that I am best at is my interaction with people in the many forms that takes, like I mentioned, like the silly cosplay pinup stuff to the very serious epic romantic wedding stuff and everything in between. But so I'm really good at shooting with people, and that is kind of primarily what I focus my business around. But because I spent all those years living and breathing a camera and just studying and focusing, what are all the things that this technical box in front of me can do? That is kind of branching out of why I'm doing so many tutorials as well.
So kind of going through and taking photos of a bunch of different things, cats and whatnot. You said you really gravitated towards weddings and people and portraits. Talk to me about maybe one of your first weddings that you shot.
Yeah. So the first wedding that I shot was a friend of a friend. It was someone who it was like friend of a friend of my mom or something, just like someone I had never met before, but heard that I owned a camera. Therefore I must be a photographer because you know how that goes. And they said, well, if you don't shoot our wedding, no one's going to be shooting our wedding. And I was like, well, I've never done one before, so I don't know if it's that good. And they were like, well, if you don't shoot it, no one will. So it doesn't matter. Just do your best. And I'm like, okay, then. So I charged them the cost of the lens that I needed to be able to shoot telephoto indoors in low light. Whopping $1,000. Woo! Yeah, so that first one, like I had studied, I looked up workshops, I did some online classes, and tried to prepare myself as much as humanly possible for that first wedding. And then when we get to it, the whole wedding's going good, except things run late as weddings do. But I'm like, oh no, things are 10 minutes late. This is a disaster. Which now it's like if things are less than an hour late, I'm like, oh, cool, we're good, we're good. But yeah, things were, slowly getting off track, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. So suddenly it's snowballing and it's getting very late. And so the church lady was a very mean church lady saying, this wedding is happening with or without them. And I'm like, I don't think you understand how weddings work. But I was young and naive and I'm like, what? Oh, okay. Well, we'll try and get it. And then it's like, okay, so formal portraits. And they're like, you have to get in here now. And I'm like, can I have like 4 minutes? She's like, you have 4 minutes. And so I set the timer on my phone. I had exactly 4 minutes to capture all of their formal portraits for the day. That was the most stressful portrait session I've ever had my entire life. It's only gotten easier from there.
That's a lot.
I mean, I still got them. They still happened. They were happy with the photos at the time. I was happy with the photos. A year later, I look at them and go, "Oh God, please make them go away." But that's just part of learning and growing and getting better. So
you're far more better than I am. My first wedding, I was just kind of winged it, and they said we're getting ready for the first look, and I said, I don't know what that is. So that goes to show your hard work and dedication, studying the online tutorials, getting ready for the wedding.
Yeah, we didn't do a first look because I didn't know that was a thing my first time either. But yeah, it was good, except for the fact that I shot it on my freaking Canon Rebel, and where the image quality falls apart at 800 ISO, and so I had to underexpose everything by 4 stops so it wouldn't turn out blurry, and then in Photoshop just crank it. And so if you actually look at the actual technical quality of that first wedding, it was atrociously bad from just pure camera standards. But, it had some artistic merit, and it was all right, especially for, a college grad.
I'll tell you, it's really hard, even in, 3, 4, 5 years, kind of looking back at kind of how far, kind of technical stuff and, whether it's video or photo or whatever. I mean, I'm getting to the point where I get some anniversaries now and I'm looking back and it's it's just because the equipment wasn't there, or I was running, so many denoise filters because it was just so dark and, trying to clean up all this stuff.
Facebook does like to remind you how bad you used to be. So you just have to take that as oh, look at how much better I've gotten, and try not to cry when you say 7 years ago, you were awful.
So when you got out of college and your dad helped you kind of start the business, were you just joyfully optimistic, or were you scared, or what was kind of your thought process of starting this business? What did that mean to you?
I think it was a little bit of both. Part of it was just you're in business now. You can do anything you want. You can wake up when you want. You can work when you want. You can work where you want. The possibilities are endless. But also what that means is you have to get people to hire you. You have to build a website. You have to make people know your name. You need a portfolio. You need to get your face in front of clients. And I didn't know how to do any of those things. So I have since learned to do all of those things. And you definitely have to be able to do all of those things. But when I was first starting out, I think the most exciting thing for me was I get to come up with a business name. And now it's you know what? People don't really care that much what your business name is. You can be Beautiful Moments, or, my case, NOM Creative. No one cares. It's just do good work, make your client happy, be able to take care of their needs. I didn't know any of that back then. I'm no, I must have 18 iterations of the website until it's perfect. Well, guess what? Your website's never done either. I still have a huge update that I have to do before the next round of wedding shows happens, for all the new stuff I've done this season. But That's life.
Yeah, I used to freak out when I have someone help with some stuff and there would be like a period out of place and I would email them and go, no, we need to fix this. And everybody's looking right now. It doesn't
matter. It doesn't matter. So this is a lesson to everyone out there. If you're not quite ready with your website, done is better than perfect. Just do it because people don't really care.
So you met your wife in college, right?
Yes, in that very first graphic design class.
So when did you guys get married?
We got married coming up on 6 years ago.
And what was that kind of process like? Were you doing a lot of weddings at that point?
So I had started getting into a lot of weddings before we actually got married, which was awesome because I was actually the one that planned our wedding. I told her, deal with your dress and the flowers and I'll take care of everything else. So I had graduated before her, so I had a little more time than she did with her studies. Plus, I had all of these contacts inside the industry of people that I knew. I already had a DJ, Alan. You've already interviewed him.
We love Alan.
We love Alan. He did our wedding, and I had all these people that the florists. I traded a photo shoot for their website for the flowers for the day, and then the cake. I did their kids' birthday parties for 3 years. Every single year.
Are you still paying off the wedding?
No, I finished that one, but I did their kids' first, second, and third birthdays in exchange for all of the desserts and cakes.
That's awesome.
For a wedding. But yeah, there were all these kind of industry contacts that I already knew, and I kind of already knew all the things that went into doing a wedding and making the day happen. So I obviously owned a bunch of photo gear. I did set up the photo booth and had a photographer friend of mine just make sure that if a trigger gets unplugged or a flash goes down, that they can just put it back up. So I did all the work, and oh boy, was it a lot of work. There's definitely a ton of stuff that goes into it, but I really think the easiest thing for someone planning their wedding is just like, what are the things that are the most important to you? Make those things awesome, and then the rest will be okay. Because like if you pick the things that are important to you and those are awesome, but you only get your second or third choice for the thing 10th down the list, okay, it wasn't your top priority anyway. You'll live. It'll be fine. And that really made planning a lot less stressful, especially since I was doing it solo. And she actually did a study abroad in Italy for a couple of months pre-wedding. So she wasn't even here. So it was, I was making all the decisions myself. And if it wasn't the dress or the flowers, I just did it. So.
Having been married now, do you feel like, or did you before feel, did you get emotionally wrapped up in weddings? Has been married kind of help, improve that? Like, do you get more emotional now or less? Or what are your thoughts about being like a married wedding vendor?
Yeah. So I think being in a relationship, not necessarily the like threshold of I am dating versus I am married, but I think being in that relationship has really helped because I do understand the love between these two people. And there are definitely times where I get emotional at a client's wedding. I have a bunch of friends that hire me to shoot their weddings. I feel like actually this summer was the summer of friend weddings because I have so many friends this summer that were getting married and saying, Ben, you're either in the bridal party or you're shooting it. I guess we'll have you shoot it. So I definitely get emotional because, I think about this person that I love so much. And then I see the two of them and they definitely love each other. And it's really great to see that. And I think that it's really great also just to see how everyone shows that differently because you'll have one people that like, they'll be really sweet and, he'll have the single tear and they'll have another people of just like, we're so excited and giddy and can't wait for the I do. And then you'll have other people that are cracking jokes in the middle. And, it's just so great to see how everyone expresses that same emotion, that same word, love, but completely different. And there's a whole spectrum of how you show it. And I think that's kind of awesome.
Do you enjoy shooting weddings the most of what you do, or do you like doing kind of some more of that editorial or more creative stuff, or where do you really kind of get your creative juices?
Yeah, so I think the three main things that I really shoot are commercial portraits, editorial, and weddings. So the commercial portraits are your real estate agents, your lawyers, your psychiatrists, anyone who needs a good headshot for business. Those are fun, and of course the clients are fun, but they're standard. Like there is a thing they're expecting. There's a thing they're looking for. There's not too much creativity to it. You just need to make them look good. You're not going to do anything crazy. It's all pretty simple headshot work. And then you get the more editorial stuff. And if it's something, I did a thing for a wedding dress boutique where they said, here are the 8 dresses that we need to show off this year. That can be fun and it can be stressful, but a lot of that stuff is, again, standard. Like we want this type of catalog work. We have this beautiful dress, beautiful model, beautiful location. And of course, every single one's different, but it's still, standard. The other half of the editorial part is like, hey, do you have a crazy idea? Go make that idea possible. So I did a shoot for a magician, and he wanted a holiday card. Well, you put magician and me in the same room, I'm going to get all kinds of crazy ideas. So what I did is, and the photo is completely in camera. People are going to scream like, all right, that's a bunch of Photoshop. No, completely in camera. I went to Goodwill, got a bed sheet and what was it, like 8 decks of cards or something. And I built a backdrop of playing cards. And then I built another prop for him to hold. I'll try and describe this since you can't see my hand motions, but when you're doing the bridge thing and you pull your hands apart and the cards in between the hands, I wanted to capture that in motion, but an insanely long one that is, 4 or 5 feet of like, no one can possibly shoot cards that far. So I poked holes in all of these cards and ran a string, and I made this prop that you can hold, 4 feet apart, and it has all the cards in that static position so I could shoot it for the photo. And so it's this crazy one, and the magician doing this crazy thing with cards, but it's all in camera. And so it looked really cool. He loved it. He used it for his card. And so that type of thing's like super over the top creative, and I love that. Here's the thing that I love about weddings though. When you have an editorial content, they'll say, this is my company, this is my branding, you got to do something like this, go. And you're kind of stuck in this box and you have to do that. With a wedding, they say, I don't know, you're the artist, make us look good, make us look cool, do something awesome. Let's do something awesome. So I can take those ideas and I can do something crazy. There was a shot that I did where rings dropped into an aquarium. And so that was something that I thought of and wanted to do. They were having a nautical themed wedding because he lived on his boat and, they love the water. And so I was thinking, okay, nautical themed wedding. He lives on his boat. The engagement session, he took us around the harbor. What's something really special that I can do? And so I got this shot with the aquarium, and I, figured out the week before we got an assistant. I set it up. I figured out how the lights all work. We got our timing with the ring drop down, and I made something that just looked really cool that they had not seen before. And I think the cool thing about weddings is because I'm not put in a little box, I can do anything I want. So I get to know the couple and I'm like, all right, what's something crazy I can do? Some of my best photos are, I have a crazy idea. Do you want to try it? So those are the things that I really like doing. And that's actually one of the reasons that I really love weddings. The whole rest of the day is beautiful too. And I definitely love, seeing that couple and capturing that for them. But I think the creative part and making them look really awesome and seeing what can I do for you that hasn't been done before. I think that's the part that I get most excited about.
Yeah, and a couple things on that. One, the nice thing about the weddings is it's like every day is a new canvas, right? So you can tailor to each wedding and client and kind of like you said, the nautical thing, and like really do that for them versus the next week it's like totally different and you can do something totally unique in that way. And one of the reasons I am really excited to kind of shoot with you next year is because I did watch your building your wedding expo booth, and you were talking about the ring shot, and then you had emailed me it too, and yeah, how you had spent like a week like getting all the timing down. So like the day of it only took you like just like
the day of it took me just a couple minutes. So I had it in I handed the assistant my notebook who had helped me out. And so they had all the notes of the flash settings and where everything needed to go. And so they were setting it all up on the dance floor while we were signing the wedding documents after the ceremony. And so all the guests are kind of looking at them like, what is going on over there? And then so when we get out to the reception, it's Mr. and Mrs. You may now come in. I say, may I please borrow your rings? And then I walk over, we drop it in the tank 3 times. I dry them off, hand them back, and then the assistant tears down. That was it. It took just a couple of minutes on the wedding day.
But it was like
but it's all the prep work and all the things that go into making it look like it was so simple and so easy.
But I mean, but that speaks to your craft. I mean, I think that like, you know, and I always feel like for like, you know, a couple on the wedding day, like, you know, whether they, you know, someone gets tired or the day goes long, like they're always going to like tap out before you are, right? Or like I am in terms of like trying to think of new stuff to do, or like, hey, oh yeah, let's go. Like the sunset looks cool. Let's go do that. Or let's go do your rings, or let's go do this, or like, you know, you're always going to keep going. And I just think that that's like an important trait to have. And that's something that like, you know, I respect, but I think that like, you know, those like crazy ideas you have, or like you had sent the photo of like the post office, right? Where it was like illegal. Like it was
Mexico.
like, but it was like illegal to shoot in front of it or something, right?
Yeah, I can tell that story. So you mentioned the post office. So that is a wedding that I did in Mexico. And so architecture here in the US, for the most part, is pretty modern, cookie cutter, built to not last per se. Architecture in other countries, oh my God. So this photo, it's this big, beautiful building with kind of a Gothic Baroque interior. And then everything is gilded in gold. There's another page of their album where the couple is just like laughing. I had like the bridal party just get together and I have some tricks to get them to giggle. But there's this beautiful gold gilded gate with these like fleur-de-lis and everything. And that's just normal. That's like standard down there. So this wedding was in Mexico, downtown, like 4 miles from the airport. Like it was a very low budget, almost nothing wedding. One of their shots, they're in front of a construction site, but you can't tell because there's one of those big sheet metal things, but it just looks like this big, beautiful piece of sheet metal. Like, so finding those creative things. But yeah, so this post office, there are these 2 huge, beautiful ionic pillars. Were they ionic? It might have been Corinthian. No, they were ionic. Yeah, ionic pillars. And so I had got down there a week early, and I did an engagement session with them the day I got there, and then hung out for the week, and then the day after their wedding, I was going to fly out. But I found this post office. I'm like, oh, guys, I got to do this shot with you. And so I had the shot planned out. And so on the wedding day, I'm like, all right, guys, so what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you stand there, flip out the veil. The groomsmen will come with the light stand. Are you ready? And go. Stood there, flipped out the veil. Groomsman comes on with the light stand. Security guard says, hey, no photos. Okay, sorry, click. And then we're done. So that was like a very guerrilla one-shot thing. And the funny thing about that is there's 18 tourists next to me all taking photos of the building. No. Security guard doesn't care about them. It's just me because I have a professional camera. But yeah, that was very much like, hey guys, we literally have one shot to make this happen.
So in the email that you sent me kind of doing the pre-production for this podcast, you had talked about, you know, how a lot of photographers capture memories, and you do that, but you're really kind of focusing on creating that art for them. So what is that philosophy, or how do you kind of bring that in? And I know we've talked kind of a little bit about the creative stuff, but like, what do you mean when you're talking about like creating art on the wedding day?
Sure. So I mean 2 different things by that. The first one is I literally want to create the art for your wall. I want to create the statement piece that people are going to talk about. And if it's just you in your wedding dress and, you know, him in his tux, then what's going to happen is that once you have kids, once you start having those family photos, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, that photo will become less relevant, and it doesn't make sense to have, you know, a 4-foot print of your wedding day in the middle of your living room. So what I really want to do is I want to create something that is so kind of artistic and matches your design philosophies and your interior decor, that it is an amazing piece of art that won't be replaced when the kids come around, or when you go on vacations together and get new pieces of art. I really want to create the artwork for the wall. So I mean that in the most literal sense. But the second thing that I mean by that is that if your wedding is a movie, I see the photographer as the director. So think about any movie that you've seen recently, good one or bad one. Bad ones are sometimes better examples, actually. You can have just last year I was talking to someone about the difference between Thor Ragnarok and Justice League. Both of them have good scripts, have good actors, have good editors, but one of them is a very good movie and the other one is 2 hours of Wonder Woman babysitting. So what is the difference between these movies? Well, for a lot of it, it's the director, because the director sets the tone. The director chooses how those things get edited together. The director has a huge influence on the finished product. So Henry Cavill could have been a great Superman, but all of the directorial choices meant that, no, we don't really like this version of Superman. So all of that to say, if the photographer is the director for the movie that is your wedding, then by being hands-on and creating these kind of statement choices and doing this over-the-top epic artwork, it just is going to be a very different feel than someone who's just oh no, I'm a fly on the wall, I create memories, I just document, I'm not going to meddle, I'm not going to do anything. That person isn't going to get some of the moments that I'm going to get. They're definitely not going to see the artwork the same way, but sometimes there's things like, let's take getting ready at the beginning of the day, for example. The bride's getting on her dress, and let's say dad walks into the room. Well, if dad walks into the room, he'll stand there awkwardly in the doorway because he doesn't know if, anyone's getting dressed and he doesn't want to, just barge in. But then he'll be like, "Aw," and then she'll turn around and go, "Aw," and you have this beautiful moment, but they're both on opposite sides of the room. She's under a fluorescent light. He's hiding in the doorway, and a candid photographer isn't going to see that. So the director should have thought about this moment beforehand and then made it a better moment. So one of the things that I might do is, if I know dad's about to come into the room, I can have her stand over there. And then before dad next to the window, and before dad comes in the room, say "Hey, why don't you go tell your daughter how beautiful she is?" So instead of standing there awkwardly gawking in the doorway, he walks up to her, tells her she looks beautiful. You have this beautiful moment of the two of them together, not on opposite sides of the room. The exact same thing happened. It's not like I was meddling, I wasn't being obtrusive, but I was directing the moment and making that candid moment possible. So between that, for the majority of the day, of just these small nudges to make these things happen and make them more photogenic and more memorable, that is one way I mean art. And then the other one is the actual stuff you put up on the wall.
Two things. I do think it's important that, not meddling, because I think in a lot of the people that hire me, or, photographers and stuff that I work with too, they don't want to feel like their day is totally being staged, right? Especially with videography. A lot of people ask oh, are you going to stage a lot of stuff? It's no, it's about just kind of guiding these moments to happen in a better way, because it isn't, you don't want to feel like you're shifting around, but you want to get people to have it be the most authentic and still photogenic kind of thing. I think it's an important kind of balance to have. And also, in terms of the photographer being the director, I do really believe that the way that, we work, I usually just kind of defer to the photographer in terms of the pace and kind of tone of the day. And we just had a wedding somewhat recently at a venue that I've shot at a ton and always had really great. It's always been good. And for whatever reason, that day, it wasn't directed right. Right. And it was still, and the couple's great. And I'm really happy with the video. And it was I made it and it was really good. But in terms of how that direction could have gone, throughout numerous times throughout the day, I'm we could be doing this so much better, like it's still great, like it's still going to be awesome, and they're going to be,
they're going to like it, but I know from past experience, this could have been better. Yeah, I get that from the venues that I shoot multiple times. Sure.
Yeah, and so like it just was like, it wasn't, I mean, frustrating, I think is too harsh of a word. I mean, it was still like an awesome day and they're really happy, but like, yeah, I mean, just little things, I think you can like make those changes that kind of, elevating, trying to make it better than it could be naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. Like something as simple as if the DJ is doing like an open mic, instead of walking around the room and handing those people the mic, having them come forward. Because having them come forward, now I have this one photo of them interacting with the couple, or I have a photo of the couple and a photo of them on the room, and they're not the same photo, and you don't really know which one they were laughing at. And it's a small directorial choices from all of the players and all of the people that are helping you, all your vendors. We all make these little choices throughout the day that help direct and shape. And kind of how I feel about it is, of course, you have the coordinator. The coordinator did all of their work beforehand. They made sure everyone's going to be there. Everyone's going to show up on time. They're kind of like the stage producer. And then once you actually show up on set, they're more like the assistant director, the one who bosses everyone around and makes sure the trains run on time, which is great and a super important part to have. Absolutely. But for the beginning of the day, from when the bride starts getting ready until that she gets announced to the reception. Thank you. I really feel like the photographer is the one that's kind of running the day and pushing and making sure the trains run on time, because if I take too long with my photos, I just made someone late. I will never do that. I will never make up late. In fact, what usually happens, everyone else runs late, and I'm the one who ends up making up the time. So being able to work fast and efficiently and think 3 steps ahead on how to direct these things, so I'm still getting everything I need, but making sure that the trains run on time. I really feel like the photographer is an essential part of that, because you definitely have times where there's 3 of you in the room. The couple and you, and everyone else is running around and doing something else. And so it's the photographer's just like their shadow. They're just following them. And so the photographer is the director, making sure that everything happens and everything gets there until I get to the reception. And I'm like, all right, DJ, my job's done. Take it away.
Which is a nice feeling, I do think. But it's tough. I think like it's a underreported challenge, I think, as a photographer, or, I like to feel like I help out somewhat, if I was there with you, but like, to have to manage, you're managing time, you're managing personalities of everybody, right? That could be other vendors, that could be the bride and groom, that could be a sister of the bride.
Or mom.
Yeah, or mom. Yeah. But, so you're managing, time, personality, logistics, getting people, or we need to do this and then that, but then also like needing to be creative, and so I think it's really hard, because like, you could do X, Y, and Z, but then you also have to have a creative eye on top of that, right? And so it's a lot of different balls, and like when I come home from weddings, like I'm exhausted, because it's like, there's just so many different, right? Do you feel that?
Yeah. For a photographer who's listening to this and does not shoot weddings, there's something very, very different about shooting for 10 hours and shooting a wedding for 10 hours. Because when you're shooting a thing for 10 hours, you can shoot the thing, you can refine it, you can, take a minute to look at things. There is no slowing down. There is no stopping. You can't take a minute on a wedding day, really. So you're absolutely right. You're juggling 15 different things, and you have to juggle those 15 different things. And so many times on the wedding day, at first, I thought this was hilarious, because I'm just like, guys, you don't understand what you're saying. You haven't seen it. But people would tell me, oh, you're such a great photographer. Thank you so much for today. And I'm like, you don't know I'm a good photographer. You haven't seen the photos.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
You did a great job. You did a really good job.
So many times they're like, oh, you did such a great job. Thank you so much for coming out today. I'm like, photos could be horrible. You don't
Yeah.
know. Like the first 20 times I heard that, I didn't understand it. And then it finally clicked. Oh, right. There's these 100 other things that you're doing and managing for the day. And they've been to weddings. They've seen people try and manage those things and fail. So the fact that you're managing all those things means you've already done a great job before the photos even get transferred to your computer.
That happens a lot when Jeff, my assistant, because I always just drop him with the groom and then they show up like an hour or two, for the first look.
Yeah, for sure.
Whatever. And they'll come up and be like, Jeff did such a good job. And you're like, you don't know that at all. He just stood here with the camera, but they assume because he seems competent and helped you kind of.
It's because he's managing all those other expectations for the day and all the people and the personalities and the timeline. Yeah, there's so many other things besides the photos.
That's really funny. So I want to talk about, because I do think you're a pretty personality driven photographer. We talked a little bit about the Star Wars and stuff. When you got here, I want to talk a little bit more about you, when you're not taking photos, or maybe when you are taking photos, but more for pleasure or other things. So first off, so you're married and you guys have a dog.
Yes. His name is Bjorn. He has his own Facebook page if you want to look it up, where it's nothing but cute photos of our big fluffy mountain dog.
When Rosie attacked you and you came and you said that Rosie could ride your dog like a horse.
Yes. So Rosie is your dog, and she can definitely ride Bjorn like a horse because he's almost 120 pounds, and he will claim you like a lap dog.
So talk to me about what you and your wife do and what do you do in spare time, and that could be with a camera or without.
Yeah, sure. So she is a seamstress. So she is very involved in making costumes for other people. We are in the 501st, which is a Star Wars costuming organization that is licensed by Lucasfilms, where you have everyone in that organization has a screen accurate costume. So it's very high level of effort and work and craftsmanship that goes into this. And the people that build some of these things are freaking talented. It's just absolutely incredible the things they can make. I can't do that. I do have one, and it took me 200 hours. It was forever. But no, so in our off time, she is always thinking of what's the next costume I want to make for myself. And then sometimes I take photos of her costumes. Or for this last Comic-Con, she wanted to do Ramona Flowers from Scott Pilgrim. I'm not a fan of Scott's character. I think he's kind of boring. So I looked through that movie. I'm like, who's interesting? Todd Ingram, Evil X number 3, the vegan.
We lost a lot of people right now.
A lot of people just stopped listening. So no, doing couples costumes like that. And so we have several of them we can name, but, the Star Wars organization, we do things like, going to Children's Hospital, walking through, and when the kids see a stormtrooper and a Jawa walking around, they're just like, "That's so cool!" It's just the most incredible things watching kids. Like, are they real? Yeah, they're real. So we love doing that. She loves making costumes, and I love taking photos of her costumes. So we spend a lot of time doing that. When we're not doing that, we like playing games, hanging out with friends. There's not a whole lot other interesting hobbies besides the costuming hobbies. But then obviously when I show up to a costuming group and say I'm a photographer, I instantly become the most popular person in the room because everyone's like, "Oh, I made this amazing thing. It took me 400 hours, cost $1,000, and all I have are cell phone photos. Can I please get photos of it?" So I spent a lot of time taking photos of all those people's really talented, incredible work.
Do you guys travel a lot to go to different Comic-Cons and stuff? I know you went down to Portland.
Yeah, I went down to Portland this last weekend. I'd say anything in between Everett and Olympia is pretty standard, fair game for where we'll go on any given weekend. But yeah, she has some family in Portland, so that makes it a pretty easy trip.
I do think in talking with you, and we've met now quite frequently, kind of in person and face to face. I do think anything that you do, whether it be photography or the costuming, you really do it like 1,000,000%, right? And like the passion kind of like, it's a very tangible passion, I think. Like, and I hope it comes across in audio form. I mean, I can see it when you talk about it. I mean, do you feel that? Do you feel like you kind of go like full throttle and figure out like,
yeah, I'm laughing because yes, absolutely. I do it to a fault. If I'm gonna do anything, I am going to do it 100% with all my heart. I won't pick up a new project unless I'm going to absolutely kill it and do it the best I can. The worst feeling in the world for me is starting something and going, but it could have been so much better. Which we already talked about websites a little bit earlier when I was talking about background, which is the worst because your website is never done and it always could be better. So that one I just had to get lax on. But anything I do, I just absolutely throw myself 100% into it. I have a little bit of an addictive personality, but that has actually been a huge benefit for me because like when I first started learning, I'm like, all right, cameras, let's do this. I'm going to learn everything I know about the camera. I'm going to memorize the manual. I'm going to know what all these things are. I'm going to have all my f-stops and the exposure triangle and have that all memorized. So when I actually am in front of a person and can do that, I can just really quick get that doing exactly what I want it to do. And then I don't have to think about the technical. I can do all the creative stuff. So that's actually something that when I'm working with other photographers, one of the things I'm doing in just a couple of weeks actually is the Worldwide Photo Walk. It's something put on by Kelby Training, Kelby One, if anyone wants to look them up. They're a cool online training source, and it's actually where I learned a lot of the stuff that I know. But they host a worldwide photo walk, so photographers internationally get together for one day. This year it's October 6th, and they walk around and they take photos of things and just see what happens. And there's a big competition, but I have won the prize for that several times for the Seattle photo walks, and I've led it several times. I'll be leading it again here in a couple of weeks. But when I see photographers there, the ones who think they know everything but don't understand the really basic technicals of their camera. That kind of gets under my skin just a little bit because, again, I have that full throttle addictive personality. I'm like, no, like, why would you do this if you're not going to learn how it works? So no, that's a very long-winded explanation of saying, yeah, whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to do it. It's going to happen.
No, I think that's great. And I also think, like just being competent, like we've talked about with like weddings or like, even if you're doing like editorial stuff, like, you need to be like competent and like more, like overly competent to like, cause you only maybe have one shot to do something.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, cause like, in my price point, not so much with weddings, but with like other events, like I might like work with photographers that like are not as competent. Right. And like, then they're spending the whole day like trying to figure out what to do, and like I'm just like like I'm running.
If you're looking down at a camera setting,
yes,
you just missed what happened.
Yes,
and at a wedding, you don't get that back. On a music video, sure, you could say, "Hey guys, I missed that. Let's try it again."
So I did want to talk about we talked about kind of your approach to weddings and kind of the art form. Like, so what kinds of couples then do you feel like you attract, or what kinds of people, seek you out? And like we were talking off air about, like if you're at a wedding show and like people come up and talk to you, obviously they've either seen it online and then they're meeting you, or they see your work there and they come up. Like, what kind of couples are drawn to kind of your energy and the work that you do?
Absolutely. I have two different answers for that. The first answer is...
I hope they're both good.
I hope so too. The first answer is if you describe your wedding as a vintage, rustic, barn door, burlap, mason jar, I'm the exact opposite of that guy. So anyone who's looking for the vintage, faded Instagram type effect, they're going to the person across from me, not from me. And that's totally fine because that's not my vibe. But anyone who loves that kind of over-the-top dramatic fashion flair, that's the type of couple I'm going for. Currently, the headline on my website says, want to look like a movie star, because on your wedding day, you're the celebrity. So that's kind of the thing I'm going for. So like, I will ask my couples, like, what are your favorite movies? Who are your favorite actors? What magazines do you read? Because those are the things that inform me of like, oh, you read Vogue or Harper's Bazaar, of like, yes, you are the type of person that is going to really love the style of work that I do. So that is the first answer. The second answer for what kind of couples hire me, because at my price point, the people who they want photography first. So they're getting their date, they're getting their venue, and then the very first thing they're looking for is their photographer. So I mentioned a little bit earlier when I was planning my own wedding, what are the like top 3 things that are important to you? Get the best for you of those 3 things. So for me, it was venue, photography, and DJ, entertainment. I would say that for me, my personal, philosophy on it was that is kind of the most important things of a wedding day. It needs to be a good space that works with all your people. I want to have beautiful photos of it, and I want everyone to have a good time. So for me, as long as those 3 things were good, the rest of the day will be okay. And so the people who say photography is the most important thing, I want the best photographer for me, because the best photographer for you might not be the best photographer for me. If you prefer the vintage fade, like that's not me, that's fine. So the type of people who photography is first, those are the people who I'm looking for, because they say, I want someone who can make me look good. 2 particular brides come to mind. One said, I don't care if I get married under a freeway, you're shooting my wedding. And that is like the best compliment I could possibly get. They were saving up for an adoption. And so they wanted to, instead of putting all the money towards the wedding, put the money towards the adoption. So they had a really small, intimate ceremony at a park with close family and friends. And it was beautiful, but they still wanted me to make it look as majestic as possible. So that was a really awesome experience. And the second one I can think of was someone who said, hey, I was actually a Disney princess at one of the Disney parks. I've had my photo taken millions of times, and I'm super self-conscious. I don't like having my photo taken. You make people look awesome. I want you to make me look this awesome. So the type of person who is either super self-conscious or very particular and picky, and they're like, I know what I like and I want that. So yeah, demanding might be one word for it, but that's fine. Like, you know what you like, and I want to make that happen for you. The people who say like, oh yeah, so we have literally everything covered. The last thing on our checklist is a photographer. Hey, do you want to do it? Well, yeah, but here are my prices. And then the person next door is probably like half the price. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. I'll go with the person next door. Like you got to really want the best. And so those are kind of the people that I'm looking for and the people that hire me. And that's actually another reason why all my clients are awesome. I have never had a Bridezilla, not once. I don't think any other photographer can say that. If you shoot 50 weddings a year, you're gonna have at least one.
No, but I think it's important. I think knowing your clientele and knowing your brand. Like every day, like there's posts online and like, hey, I'm looking for whatever, and there's like video too, and like all these people comment like, oh, we have all these packages that fit in any range, and we can do whatever you need and whatever you like. We're there, and whatever you want, we can do, and like. That's getting and everyone has to start somewhere, but like being able to get past that, I think is like so important, like just for like business mind and like being of like a sound mind and like knowing who your brand is and whether it's your brand or my brand or whoever's brand, like being able to get past the like, oh, I'll do anything you need we have anything that you need that day that I can fit in.
Oh, I started there.
Yeah. No, and everyone does. But being able to like not have to do that, I think is like great, because then like you said, like you get to shoot, what you want to shoot, and you get the clients that you want to get, and the people that hire you are happy because you want you don't want someone to hire you and then not be happy. Like,
yeah. So actually, when I first got started, I was there. I was the hey, I'm super affordable, please hire me. I was getting a bunch of contracts from another production company that was like the week before the wedding. They're like, hey, are you available Saturday? And it was like I would show up and be like, all right, are Brian and Susan here? Like, hello, hi, I'm your photographer. Like, and those weddings didn't quite go as well as they could have because none of the planning was involved. I wasn't the friendly face. I was the weird guy who was standing next to them all day. So no, we all start somewhere, and I definitely started there. But once I realized, hey, you know what? I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. And then once I genuinely got good, because there's a difference between thinking you're good and charging a lot and genuinely being good. But once I got good and realized like, hey, no, I'm pretty good at this, then I don't need everyone, and that's okay. Things really turned around from the business side. But one thing I can say for other artists is, I'm sure you've felt this. If you don't feel it now, you've felt it before. But as an artist, you get that imposter syndrome of like, oh, wow. Like the very first wedding I did, I'm like, oh, they're actually going to pay me $1,000 to do this for just a couple of hours? Like, that's crazy to me. And you don't really think you're good enough, and you always second guess yourself, and you see like, oh, you know what? I took 100 shots and only 20 of them are any good. Yeah, that's what happens. But this imposter syndrome, like as artists and creatives in any field, like I know designers and painters who all do this, and they second guess themselves, and they say, well, I was charging $20 an hour, and I feel kind of bad about charging 25 because I don't know if I'm worth it. I'm like, can you even eat on that? Like, so yeah, there's definitely this kind of imposter syndrome that's in the back of our heads. But once you come to terms with like, no, I'm actually really good at what I do, and I've worked really hard to get here, and that's okay. Like, I'm doing something really wonderful for the couples. They are happy to pay me money because I make them look amazing. And so as long as I'm making them happy, like that's all I really care about. And then the rest just kind of falls in.
Perfect. I think that's a good positive note to end on.
Hey, look at that.
I really appreciate you finding the time and coming down here. I know we connected. I just saw you in person a couple weeks ago, and I said, like, you're definitely somebody I want to have to come on here and kind of, give your take. And I think it's awesome. And I think you're great in terms of photography, but then also like, all these other facets like we've talked about with the calendar and like the tutorials and just kind of everything, and always trying new things. So I really appreciate you coming in. If people want to learn more about you and your photography and what you do, or follow your dog, I guess, on Facebook, but more specifically your photography, what would you have them do and check out?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Ben Lucas. My company is NOM Creative. That is NOM, as in nom 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 nom. The sound the Cookie Monster makes when he's opening the cookie jar. I chose that name before I got into weddings. I probably wouldn't choose it again today. I don't think I'd be that brave, but people love my business card because it has a bite taken out of the corner. And so, you know what? You remember me. It sticks. So it is NOM Creative on any platform of your choice: Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, even. Just wherever you want to find me. nomcreative.com. And my dog's Facebook page is Saga of Bjorn. So facebook.com/Bjorn the Bernese, because he's adorable, and you need more dogs in your Facebook feed.
Perfect. This has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. Check back next week for another wedding vendor interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.